Welcome to Repeatable Revenue, a show for online entrepreneurs, remote business builders, and those that are aspiring to be. I'm your host, Ray Green, and on this podcast, I'm going to share everything that I've learned and am learning about building my online business from a remote Mexican beach. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Marcus Chan. Marcus is a friend of mine, and he's an accomplished sales coach. He's helped hundreds and hundreds of B2B AEs and sales pros start earning 50 to 100,000 more per year in commissions through his coaching program. He's also the founder of Vinley Consulting, and he's a hell of an entrepreneur. Today, we're going to talk about systems that work, systems that don't, and some of the lessons that he's learned as he's built his business. So without further ado, let's dive in and hear from Marcus. Welcome to the show, Marcus. Glad to have you.
What's up, brother? Pumped to be here. Let's have some fun. Twins with our sweet tank tops, right? Matching.
Yep. Yeah. I was going to say, you got the memo. Like this is the dress code.
This is the mandatory dress code, right? You gotta be cool, calm, and casual. I like it.
That is right. That's how we do it in Baja. No bad days, man.
That's right.
Well, I'm looking forward to diving in. So you tell me, how do you intro yourself? I know you've got the coaching company, but I'm Marcus Chan and I do what?
Cool. Super simple. So if someone's like, oh, hey, what do you do? I'm like, oh, cool. I help sales professionals max their comp plan out and make an extra 50K to 100K more in commissions every year.
And it's probably not binary, but when did it kind of convert from, all right, I'm putting stuff out there and I'm listening to what the market says and I'm going to follow where that goes versus, I know where I'm going right now, because you're very clear about that now. You're very systematized. Was there a time that it flipped?
It's an evolution, right? It's and I think you'll appreciate this. So when everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but they don't realize because you have freedom of choice, that's also the issue. You have freedom of choice. And I remember starting and I'm like, oh man, first couple weeks, I'm working my ass off, I feel like. And after a couple of weeks, my wife's like, how's it been so far? I'm like, and I realized my offer was good, but wasn't great. And then from there, I'm like, I had clarity now. I had improved the offer. I had to build a back end. And I started working my ass off doing all these things. And at this point, I actually had clarity because I actually got help. I had someone who's done the game significantly better than me at a way higher level, way faster. I'm like, this is the dude I got to follow. So now I have clarity in the path. And then from there, that was the real turning point. Because I had micro progression, but the real turning point was getting that coach of Dan Henry and be like, what I'm doing is not a good way to do it. And that's why it's not sustainable. This is a better way. And that's why I started doing what he was doing.
And you're great at that. I mean, we talk about salt, and we've had some of the same coaches. I know we both believe you've got to invest in yourself. You've got to,
totally.
If there's the shortcut in life is find somebody who's done it and pay them to tell you how to do it. And it's, just figuring it out on your own can be a challenge. One thing that you said was, you tried the webinar, you were trying the content, you were trying different things. And a lot of people that leave the executive role where in a lot of companies, mistakes aren't really rewarded. We're rewarded as executives for wins, not for going out there with losses. And so if you've been in the corporate world for 10, 15 years, a lot of times you get into the entrepreneurship side and you're gun shy. Was that
you're brainwashed to not make mistakes?
Yeah, you're right. Is that something you had to overcome, or was it innate? Did you know, listen, I'm just going to put myself out there. If the webinar flops, fuck it, it flops. Or did you have to force yourself to do it?
So, it's probably a mixture, right? Because, I grew up in a world where I got to be very entrepreneurial, even in the roles I was in. So I was just I was always testing stuff and always trying out new things to improve stuff. That's probably what made me better than most people, right? Because I was running like an entrepreneur at a company.
Mm-hmm.
I was an entrepreneur who just ran my own business. So I already had that a lot already. But there's this level of perfectionism that really held me back, I think, as well, right? And there was some ego too. I think definitely some ego for sure. Because I look back, I'm like, why did I get help to begin with? I'm like, "Oh, yeah, just because I ran these huge sales teams doing, like, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, that doesn't mean I'll be good at being an entrepreneur." Like, so sometimes I think my own ego got my own way, and then it was interesting, it was like once I joined Dan Henry's program, I realized very quickly my ego actually made my product not as good as it could have been. And what I mean by that was, I didn't really understand the term, sell before you build. Most people build and they start selling that. They build a product and they try to sell it.
Mhm.
So that's what I did, and I had a good product because I was selling to an old version of me. That's what I was selling to a past version of me. So I built a product which would be good for that, and it worked. And it was a decent product. It wasn't terrible, but it's inferior to what it is today, right? Um, and what's interesting was I just did not realize when I built it, that version 1.0, I didn't realize that it was through my own lens and perspective. It was through the lens of more people. So one of the things I thought was really, really interesting was, Danny called it sell before you build, which is you go out, you get the market feedback, and you don't build anything, and then you try to pre-sell the offer first. And once you pre-sell it and you get enough people, then you build it live with them. And then you
Mhm.
get the real-time feedback to make it really good. So that's actually what I did. So I spent like 2 months doing exactly what I was doing, and then I did a beta version a few months later, like it was like June 2020, launched it. I think we sold probably like 10 or 15K. It was still considered a low ticket offer at the time, and it was a beta version and really high conversion. I think we converted like even live on the webinar, it was probably like 15-20%. So it was a pretty good conversion without a sales call. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, so like, we did that. And then I'm like, interesting. So then I made the offer even better. So I made the product better, made the solution better, better copy, everything aligned way better. Things just resonate, hit more. And then now I had the version like 2.0 done. And then from there, I was able to make it even better to a 3.0 a month later.
Mhm.
Right. And then do a full launch in August. But it was that ego held me back from thinking the product was already good. How do you know it's good? We're biased in our own head, right? So now
Right.
even like now I track confidence scores of how people in the program. We have like specific I track like how long someone takes now from the start to first result. So now I have data points to be able to say, well, on average, it's 14.1 days to get a result in our program. So now I have the data to back it up because I obsess about some of these things to actually make it better. But you're not gonna know these things if you don't get help because you're oftentimes blinded by your own ego.
Yep. Well, I can tell you, I mean, so the program that I released in April, I have documents, Marcus, that go back 2 years probably, that this was in my mind. Like I even had it named and some of the curriculum and things I wanted to build, but I kept putting it off. Like I had to build out all the curriculum. I had to build, like,
Yeah.
make sure all the courses were right. And I finally said, fuck it. Like in April, I took the time to build, but it was the marketing and the sales part of it. And
Yeah.
then when people said, you know what, Ray, like, yeah, we want to join this thing, then we built it. Like with the first
That's
cohort
it.
or two, we actually went through and built it, and now it's a matter of refining it. Um, Now, what's one thing I wanted to ask you is because you have a team now, right? When you were solo, or even with some VAs, how did you go about picking your priorities on, all right, I need to change some things in marketing. I need to make improvements to the products. I need to change how I'm doing like internal systems. Like there's all these things that you could be working on. And I know
Mhm.
you're a really like systematized person. How did you go about picking where you were going to allocate your time and what was going to have the highest rewards, and then
Yep.
letting certain things kind of sit in the background, which is a discipline when you're, especially when you're solo. How did you go about that?
So first I figured out where was my constraint. Like, where was the constraint in the business? 'Cause wherever there's like a bottleneck in the business, and if it's constraining something that has a big impact, how can we eliminate the constraint? All right.
Mhm.
So I'll give you like and there's also like what's that task worth value wise? So for instance, one of the first things I basically removed was content editing in videos. So I used to edit all my own videos, do all that, right? Took a lot of time. I was constrained. Me physically, open the video up, plug into Camtasia, editing it, taking subtitles, putting it in, trying to add graphics and background music. That's not my zone of genius, but I knew it would help bring top of funnel leads. Like, I knew that, right? So I'm like, interesting. Like, I'm like, that's one of the first things I should probably outsource. So I did, right? So like, I had another VA and I had her do. I taught her how to do all of that. I'm like, I just started having her do. Like, I'm like, interesting. Now, you start doing these things, and you're like, all right, cool. You start like machine. You kind of change one thing at a time. It starts getting better and better and better, and then you start observing what are some other constraints. And I remember, it was July 2021. Business is humming, we're doing good, and it's still me and 2 VAs, right? So it's me and 2 virtual assistants, and one does full-time video editing and content. It's all my editing for videos and cuts the clips and does all that stuff. So she's doing that. Other person's like, managing just a bunch of administrative stuff that needs to be done in the business. And I remember it was, so, we had COVID obviously for, everything shut down. July 2021 was the first time I was take a real vacation. So we're all gonna go Hawaii. I'm like, great. I'm excited, right? I'm like, and I'm still running sales calls, everything. So I'm like, 0 sales calls, right? So for 2 weeks, didn't take any sales calls. And that month, like, we only made like 35, 40K. I was pissed. I was like, oh my God, I'm the constraint. I'm the constraint right there. Right? Like, I'm the constraint. I'm like, because I like, number one, I'm not going to take sales calls on my vacation. I'm just not going to. I just time frames what I want, right? And I realized I didn't see that constraint because I wasn't taking vacation. I was like, oh, I'm just doing my thing and just doing whatever. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, to remove this constraint, I have to hire. So literally at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to hire a closer, a salesperson to run calls. Now, what was also interesting was I also realized the other constraint was we didn't have, like, it was doing what I was doing. It's like if I wanted to pay them, I would need to have more sales calls as well because we would like automatically, organically through the system with zero ads that could attribute the time. We would book 8 to 12 calls automatically every week just through organic. People watch the video sales letter, they book a call. Like, it was just like, get more eyeballs on it, all organic. I'm like, if I have a closer, they need to have at least 15, 20 calls a week consistently, right? Because they're going to probably close at a lower rate, first off, because they're probably going to be at the same level. But also they need to, like, they want to make sure they can make a lot of money. I want them to make at least, 150, 200 grand a year. So I'm like, okay. So then at that point, I'm like, I got to hire a closer and also a setter. I'm like, if I can hire a setter and a closer, I'm like, I need the systems now to set them up. So now suddenly, because of that, I'm like, oh, here's the priorities. So now my priority is like, okay, number one, how can I find the right talent? And number two, how can I build a back end system so when they come in, they have SOPs and processes set in place. So I think there's an important lesson here. I didn't start building these things out because I thought I might need these things. Because a new problem arose, I'm like, I had to solve for this constraint. And because that constraint would require me solving a different problem, I then had to solve those problems first in order to solve this bigger problem. Right.
Mhm.
So like, it's kind of like as you solve one problem, a new one will arise. So you solve that, and you solve another, and another one will arise. But eventually, if you solve enough problems, eventually you'll get to where you want to go. And that's kind of how I look at entrepreneurship. It's like it's just a series of solving problems every single day to a point where you can kind of start staffing or start replacing what you're doing with people who can do a better job than you are going to do.
Were you ever in a spot where to go fix that problem, you felt like some part of the core business was going to fall off? Like, and that's one of the challenges I know for a lot of solopreneurs is I'm the constraint, but I'm also essential to each of these functions. So if I take some of my time to start building these systems, some of the things that are like driving the business today then stop. So you get trapped in this spot. How did you manage that?
So I think, well, first off, it sounds so simple. I literally, I used to use Trello. I took a Trello board out and I tracked for a whole week everything I did. Like, each one's a card, like every task, right? So I had this running list of like just a bunch of useless tasks is what it basically broke down to. And then from there, I'm like, what roles will I hire for? Right. And I created new like columns for the roles I'll then hire for, and I started moving the tasks of those people. So
Mm,
this helped me identify now very visually, like, oh, yeah, I could just have a VA do this. Like I'm like, there was stuff I'm like I was still doing that I just didn't think to give my VA. So now my VA, I can't really say she only does one thing because she does like random things. Updates the
mhm,
AR tracker, like when we have when new client gets on board, she creates a visual card that we can like use for more. It's just like all these things. Like I think they're important to a certain extent, but you just like I started like just delegating it out, right, with existing staff. It's like how can I maximize the efficiency of each person on my team, and then
mhm,
who could I hire for, right? So like my next hire, so it's going to be an executive assistant, right? So like just to get rid of some of the other things that um I need like an English speaker to be able to do. And in addition to like a bunch of other just like stuff that just needs to be done, but I need a high caliber person that can actually take care of it. Right. So like I think you identify what those things are first, eliminate the things that are gonna have the least amount of impact, but they still take your time. Get those done. And then once you realize well, like if you have to build something out, for example, like new sales hire, I want to build an internal training. I knew I could not do it. They can come in and they'll probably take long to ramp up. Or I could buckle down for like 2 weeks, remove distractions, and just make it happen, get it done.
mhm,
Like focus more about getting it done versus making it pretty. So that way when they started, they're able to ramp up very quickly. So for example, like I had a new setter, the new setter started recently. His first month, because the train is so dialed, first month set 28 appointments. His first month, right? Has zero setting experience. Just came in, I injected him to what I already built out. He just followed it and booked 28 meetings. So that's what happens because I buckled down, made it happen. So sometimes there's gonna be sacrifice of like, okay, I'm gonna take zero sales calls, block it out. Like it's gonna cost me some money today and tomorrow, but in that time frame, I have to be disciplined and just do these things and get it done. If I don't get it done, it'll cost me more long term wise. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does make sense, and it's a really good point because the confidence to step away from a couple of things seems to come from clarity of what the next step is. Like, so if I know, all right, I can see by hiring this person, these are the roles they're going to have, these are the things that are not on my plate, this is the system I have to build for them. That clarity then gives me the confidence to say, all right, I'm not going to take sales calls for a week, but in that week, I'm going to do these things because I understand the trade off. I think a lot of people get stuck when the plan isn't super clear. And so you just end up in this, like, in this vortex, you know? Um,
So I think if you start with the goal first, it's like what's your goal, right? Like for example, like in 2022, I'm like I have a couple big goals. Number one, write the book. Number two, YouTube channel. So I made it happen, right? Because anytime I had free time, if I'm like, ah, what could I be doing? It's very clear. Write the book. YouTube channel.
mhm,
Like when you have that North Star, and you call it North Star, when you have that clarity of the goal, doesn't matter the path is not as clear. As long as you can see, as long as you know the end destination, the path will become more clear by simply having the end goal first.
yep. And you know what? Like your tolerance for work and like, I always say like burnout comes from lack of like not feeling like you're making progress towards a meaningful goal. It has way more to do with that than it does the amount of
Yes,
work I have to do. If I can see
yes,
the
sir.
destination, you'd be amazed at how much work I can do
That's right.
and sustain. But it's when you don't feel like you're making progress towards something that actually matters, like that's when it starts to feel like overwhelm and burnout and just yeah, it's not as rewarding anymore. Um,
Progress is the ultimate motivation.
yep.
Like that's why this is actually why every day I write down like 3 to 5 things that I did to move towards my goals every single day, no matter how small, because it helps remind me because like if these goals are big, if they're big, you're not going to see the single step, right? But when you are tracking it daily, then you're like, oh, actually, hey, I made some progress today. So for example, I walked like 75 marathons in 2022 based on what my ordering told me, right? Like but I wasn't trying. But that wasn't actually the goal. I was like, I just want to walk. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna walk 10,000 steps a day at least. And because I did that, it ended up equating to this really cool goal. But each day, I'm like, cool. My goal was just make sure I move daily, so I stay healthy and don't become a huge fat dude.
It sounds cliche, but it's like
Yeah,
one step at a time. Literally, in that case, it's
yeah,
one step. Like it's breaking down.
literally.
Yep, one goal back to a monthly goal, back to a weekly goal.
That's it.
Well, I know you. I could talk to you for hours about business, and I'm going to have you back on this really soon. But one
Good.
question before I leave, what is one the bet like your favorite quote or the best piece of advice that you've been offered?
Mm, well, I would say, I'll give you my favorite quote first, 'cause I think it's probably easier. So, the quotes it's an Aristotle quote is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is then not an act, but a habit." And, I love that quote because, any entrepreneur, any exec, any salesperson can be really great one time, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, but very few can be consistently excellent. So if you think about the kind of long-term habits, I think it's very applicable to entrepreneurship. That's very, very powerful. The second piece, in terms of probably best advice, is only take advice from people who have done what you want to do on a consistent massive level. So it kind of aligns to it very, very well. I look back to, I didn't take my own advice. I wish I had gotten a mentor early on, right? When I started my business, that would have helped me so much more. But I think in today's time, there's not necessarily, I think it's easy to find a mentor because so many people out there, but you actually have to be very good at filtering the advice and really choosing who you want to listen to in the noisy world. And if you could do a really good job of having a good filter, identify the people you actually resonate with and what they've done, those people you want to follow, then block everything else out, and then just execute relentlessly toward whatever they tell you to do.
Yep, great advice. And it's you said it earlier. It's whether it's ego or not realizing that the help is out there sometimes. But that
Yep.
was same thing for me. Like out there, I had built businesses before. I had a successful executive track. Like I was, I could do this. But it was when I invested in my first program, right? And it's not just self-serving. It fast tracked me. It was a turbocharge to,
Hmm.
to the next phase, to the next season. Like you just
That's
get
right.
through the next phase hell of a lot faster, man.
So
Well, I
much faster.
appreciate having you on, brother. Where can people find you when they want to go find Marcus Chan?
Yeah, so you can look me up on LinkedIn, super easy. You can get a free copy of my Wall Street Journal bestselling book, closewithchan.com, or head to
Great
my
book.
website, sixfiguresalesacademy.com.
Excellent. Well, love having you. Congrats on the book success and all the business success. And look forward to having you back soon, brother.
Thanks, brother. Always a pleasure.